Hi, I'm Jim Denison, non-union, non-affiliated. Yeah, I completely understand. Uh, Let me tell you a similar situation that happened to me. Um, I have two boys. Luke's the youngest, and as we would work the farm from day to day, Luke would like to go into town and get supplies for us, and that was fine. But it seems as he got older, the trips into town took a little bit longer. In fact, one day, let me just tell you something similar to what you just described. But one day, Luke got up and went to town early in the morning. Um, and we went ahead with work as we normally do. We just waited for his return. We would shoot glances up at the road to see if he was coming. But day went by and it started to get pretty near nightfall. So we quit work for the day and I went and sat on the porch at the house just waiting for him to come. And you know how it is with parents. We get this knot in our stomach, right? When we don't know where our kids are. Well, I had already determined that if he didn't come home by nightfall, that I was going to go out looking for him. Well, just then I see him coming up the road. Something's a little different here. He is very determined in his walk, very purposeful, almost resolute as he was coming towards me. And it just seemed like he marched right up on the porch and stood in front of me. He didn't say anything for a minute. I don't know if he was just trying to work up the courage to say what he wanted to say to me, or if he was having second thoughts, maybe about what he wanted to say. But his silence only lasted a minute. Obviously, he'd been thinking what he was about to say for a long time, and apparently rehearsing the words. "Father," he said, "I'm tired of living in this place. It's stifling me. It's holding me in. I can't live in this cage anymore. I can't breathe. I've got to find some place to go. What I'm trying to say is, I'm leaving." "So where are you going to go?" I asked him. I didn't know what else to say to him at that point. "Well, I'm headed to the city. I have some friends there," he said. "What will you do there?" "I don't know. Hang out, party, be alive, not worry about the farm or getting up before the crack of dawn. Just not worry about anything. I want to be free," he said, his well-rehearsed speech now kind of falling apart. "Do you really think that will make you free?" I asked. "Luke, a life spent without responsibility isn't freedom. It's denial. I mean, if you chase after this foolishness, you're going to end up a slave to your own vices. You'll end up a slave to money. By the way, have you even thought about how you're going to support yourself?" And then he said something that just cut deep. He said he wanted me dead. Now, he didn't say it exactly that way, but I knew what he meant. What he said was, "I'm owed an inheritance. Give me what I deserve because of the years that I've worked this place so that I can leave this place. Give me what I'm due." I didn't know what to say. All I could think was, how could I have messed up so completely? How could I have failed to teach him? Did he really think that the life that he was chasing was freedom? If he did, then I failed. I couldn't think of any other way to show him. I couldn't think of any other way to tell him, to make him understand. So I did what I'd never imagined. The next day, I started walking the south half of my land. That is a rich and fertile piece of ground. I mean, the harvest, I have planted on it countless times, and every time the harvest from it fed my family and provided for so many more. My great-grandfather He himself had worked that land and passed it down through the generations to me. And as I walked along each field, I could feel his presence, his sweat and blood in the soil. That land was my heritage. That land was my life. But Luke was my son. When I sold that field the next day, Luke came up almost immediately, took the money. He didn't even look me in the eyes. I think what hurt me the most wasn't that he was leaving. It was that he didn't even understand the sacrifice it was for me to let him go. I mean, sure, it hurt to give up the land, but it hurt even more to see him walk out that door wishing I were dead. You can always come home, I told him as he walked down the road. Well, life continued after that. Gary and I continued to work the farm and the fields, and we still laughed some, but not as much. Gary couldn't understand why I did what I did. There were some days I couldn't understand why I did what I did. We would hear pieces of stories from people passing through, stories of Luke and his new lifestyle. Seems like he had a lot of friends. Every story seemed to involve him in a bar somewhere, buying drinks for everybody. Yeah, everybody loved him. Through the first year, I kept thinking, Luke will wake up. He'll come home. In the second year, I stopped hoping for him to come home at all and just hoped to hear some news about him. I would ask travelers, for stories about him, but no one seemed to know where he was anymore. They thought maybe he had moved away. Part of me had wondered whether he had really found that freedom that he was looking for. Part of me wondered if he had grown up enough to maybe understand that freedom couldn't be bought with money. And honestly, part of me thought he might be dead. So, 5 years later, it was still tearing me up inside. One day a man came to see me. He owned a large farm several towns over. We had seen each other in the market and knew each other well enough to say hello. But he stood on my porch with his hat in his hand, looking kind of sheepish. And I just didn't know what would bring him all this way to see me. I know you've been looking for your boy, he said. I found him. And then he began to tell me a story. It was a story that just turned my insides out. He said that Luke had come to him. He was thin and starving. And he was looking for work. And the only work that this man had was shoveling manure on his farm and feeding his pigs. And he told how some of the workers had seen my son. Because he was hungry, eating what the pigs were eating. I looked away so the stranger wouldn't see me, see the tears running down my face. He knows he can come home anytime. Apparently, though, he would rather live with the pigs than live with me. The man slowly slipped off my porch and went on his way. And I just sat there and I cried. He'd rather live with the pigs than with me. Well, work continued as it always does. And over the next few weeks, I just couldn't stop staring at the road. All day long, I found my eye wandering back there, hoping to see Luke there. Every night, I would just sit on the porch, and I would gaze in the distance and hoping. And sometimes I would see a figure coming over the horizon and stand up, only to have it turn out to be someone else. And then one day, 6 years later, after Luke had left, I saw a figure coming up the road. I stood up, I almost convinced myself that it was someone else when I saw the way he walked. I knew it was my son. And I took off in this most undignified run toward him at a pace that surprised several of the hired hands. And just as I reached him, he started some speech that he had been rehearsing with each step he had taken. Something about being so sorry, not worthy to be called my son anymore, and working for me as a hired hand. But he was interrupted, and as I ran at him at full speed, my arms wide open, I said, "Boy, hush, of course you're still my son. Hey everyone, come, Luke is home. Fire up the grill, bring him some clothes, call the neighbors, we're going to have a party. Luke has come home. Luke has come to freedom."